How have you guys been?
So far.
Okay, can you hear me?
Now I can.
Were you responding to me?
Yes.
Okay. No, there were all sorts of combinations in the sound settings. I kept asking, can anyone hear me? And I couldn't. Or actually couldn't hear me.
I mean, if you put enough Linux users into like this, it's bound to be.
We seem to be getting feedback.
Right, yeah.
And we're getting the feedback when you talk.
When I talk?
Yes, but the feedback was lighting up the camera.
I just lowered my output volume from my speakers.
I'll put on some headphones.
Oh, that's better. Yeah, I don't like, yeah.
You still hear the whining in the background?
Lower.
A little better.
Okay. Plantronics is the device I'm using. Filters out background noise. We're getting the whining when I was using the microphone on the webcam. When it's the Plantronics device. Settings where apparently it's working now. Oh, that's a good.
So I don't know if you guys know this is funny. I found a very interesting computer mouse recently. I purchased it on eBay. It was sent to doctors' offices in the late 90s as a promotional item promoting Viagra. And so it's shaped like a race car, and it has the Viagra logo all over it, which I thought was a pretty weird piece of history. So you can get one. You can pick them up for like $15, old stock, new in box, with the floppy disk driver. So pretty cool. Unfortunately, it's a ball mouse, so it kind of sucks. I don't really use it, but it is cool.
Yeah, those wireless Bluetooth earphones I bought last month, Balltune, they had good sound, but John, you're causing a feedback. But the problem is the mic would last maybe 5 minutes and then stop, and I couldn't get it restarted. So I put in a service call, and they're sending me another pair. I don't know if that's going to fix it. I don't know if it's a problem with the model or a problem with just the set I got.
My experience with Bluetooth is that you hook up Bluetooth to Windows, Android, Linux, Mac OS, and it only ever works on Android and Mac OS with the mic. You can use the mic for like 5 minutes on Windows and a Linux desktop, and the mic cuts out. And I have had that experience with several devices, and I count it as it's never going to work.
Yeah, I did have the problem I had a Jabra, and the Jabra, the mic did work, but Jabra was complaining that the sound was very scratchy on it, and the Jabra would run for about an hour and then need to be recharged.
I was just do wired everything for similar reasons. I find, yeah, the Bluetooth stuff is difficult to get it to stay working. And this, lasts a really long time. Swappable cables. Hopefully these will last a lot longer. With Android in particular, they used to use the Linux Bluetooth stack, and they just re-implemented all of it and made their own Bluetooth stack because I guess ours is not sufficient. And it worked out, I think. Theirs definitely works better. I saw a pretty interesting old Google Plus post from Rob Pike that I'm going to share. And it's about why dot at the beginning of a file name hides the file. And I guess it all works back to way back in the day. They were writing ls, and they didn't want dot and dot dot to show up in ls. So instead of checking if if the entry in the directory was dot or dot dot, they just checked if it started with dot as like a shortcut, and it that like accidental feature spawned dot files as we know it today. I think it's pretty funny.
Yeah, that goes way back in Unix,
Yeah.
in the Unix day.
And if Rob says so, I'll believe him.
Yeah, he was in that post. He was lamenting it and saying that it was a stupid decision, because now his home directory is filled up with all these dot files that he doesn't even know what they do.
Well, yes. I mean, it would be better if most of those things were in a dot name something directory as opposed to right in home. I'll agree with that.
Or just in a a config directory that doesn't even need to be hidden, and then you can actually find them all instead of having to look in. Okay, it could be in .config, could be in like .local share, could be in just in your home directory. It could be in its own directory in your home directory. It's kind of messy the way it is now.
Well, for what it's worth, I'm using a KDE Plasma desktop, and I have a lot of apps installed, and I have things that are not in the config folder where they're supposed to be. Let me take a look right now. Okay, I've got between dot directories and dot files that ought to be under config and local. Got about 20. So I was going to say it's not too bad, but then I look at it. Yeah, it's pretty bad. There's a .vs code folder under my home folder that shouldn't be there. And you're talking to yourself.
Oops. Yeah, my window had the wrong focus. Yeah, I was just saying that I have 70 dot files in my home directory right now, which is pretty outrageous. How do you guys synchronize your dot files? So when you set up a new computer, how do you just manually copy over all of your bash RC and things like that, or do you have a system?
I don't synchronize my dot files. I have a cheat sheet in my diary that says how I configured applications, and most of my configuration ends up being in the browser. And I've got like a handful of extensions I want to install, and synchronizing browser profiles is just a pain, and setting up a brand new browser profile is really not that bad. And for passwords, I just put everything in KeePass and manually copy and paste whenever I need to log into something.
That sounds like it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I'm pretty much like Brendan. When I set up a new computer, I just take the defaults for my home directory, and then I add Dropbox to it, depending on the security I want.
All my diary and notes and a lot of stuff like that isn't code projects. I have that all in C file, and I've got the central C file servers running in my apartment.
I actually have a folder .bash.d in my home directory. That way, when if I do a reinstall, I don't end up wiping out all my bash RC stuff.
I keep my home directory on a separate partition so that I can reinstall without wiping my home directory. But that only works on one computer. To synchronize dot files, I have them all in a Git repo, which can confuse certain things because I'll set my git ignore to ignore everything but my dot files. But that means every folder that I have is in a Git repository. So certain things that try to be git ignore aware, like riprep, will ignore everything, which is not what I want. So then I have to undo that every time. So my system
could
is
you put all those synchronized Git files in a project folder and then symlink from where the file wants to be installed, symlink from there?
Yeah, that would probably work. That's
I
pretty
did that
fun.
a while ago. I stopped doing it. I'm not saying my way is better, but it works better for me to just write in my diary, how did I configure an app? And usually, like from year to year, it changes anyway. So like every computer rebuild is a process.
The thing is, I use a bunch of different computers, and I want them all to reflect my newest configurations. So
That
having a
totally
Git
makes sense.
repo does work well for that.
If I wanted to do what you're doing, I would put all that stuff in C file and then symlink it back to where the program wants to find it.
What is? I've never heard of C file. What is C file?
It's like Dropbox, except it's your server.
Okay, that's cool.
Take a look at the link I just dropped in chat. It's called Chesmoy, and it uses a Git repo under the hood that you can templatize your .config files, and it copies them into place, and the repo is elsewhere, and it can work cross distro, cross platform. I use it both for my Mac and my Linux boxes, so that depending on what platform I'm on, it has all of my configs specific for that system, but also with all of the common stuff and up to speed. And I just keep my master Git repo up on GitHub in a private repo, and Chesmoy syncs with that from on whatever system I'm on. It's really quite spectacular.
That sounds very cool. Nix actually provides a tool called Home Manager that does something like that, but I've never used it, so I don't know. But that looks really cool. I'll definitely look at that.
I was trying to solve this exact same problem years ago and stumbled across this and said, hey, somebody's already got a great system set up.
Cool. Yeah, the big annoyance that I have with my thing is that some of my computers are laptops and they have batteries, and others are desktops and don't. And on the laptops, I want the batteries to show up in my status bar. So in my little status bar script that runs every second, I want it to update my battery percentage. On my desktops, I don't want there to be any battery stuff. So every time I push up a change from my desktop, I have to make sure I undo all the changes I've made to the battery stuff to get rid of it. And then whenever I pull in the changes I've made remotely on a laptop, I then have to comment out or delete all the battery parts. So I'm in need of a better system.
Yeah, with the templatizing of Chesmoy, you could do that very easily and just say when on this type of system, have that, or when on and other times don't have it.
Cool.
I even have it set up so that I inject like my email in certain places, and on my work systems it's my work email, and on my personal systems it's my personal email, and my NSFW systems it's a different email.
You have whole dedicated systems for that. I understand now.
Well, a login.
Okay.
That login isn't on all systems.
Probably not on work systems.
Well, definitely not there. But that's just one example. I can also have templatized my VPN stuff and my proxy stuff, and you can have have variables that hold those values local to every system. So it just pulls it from that local system, injects those into your into that particular system, and changes it as needed. You can also do conditionals where blocks of config are only present on a specific system based on, for instance, OS. So there's my full homebrew brew file is templatized and customized Linux versus Mac OS.
You use Brew on Linux?
I do.
Why?
It's easier to use Brew for command line stuff when I'm running Silverblue on Fedora Silverblue. It doesn't like it's too much of a pain to install an RPM and then reboot just for a command line tool.
Yeah, actually, Nix provides a very useful tool called Nix Shell that I'm going to talk about later that provides a similar functionality that you might find useful.
Yeah, there's Toolbox on Fedora also, which is available across all of the Fedora offerings.
What is that?
Toolbox is basically a containerized development space.
Is it actually running in a container, like a duplicated file system, or is it?
It is running in a container with just the basically the home directory shared. But you can launch a toolbox and install RPMs in it and spin it up and destroy it, whatever.
Cool.
Yeah, at one time I was using Dropbox as my home directory, but that had its problems, and I just stopped it and just linked a couple of my major directories to it.
That works great for the home systems. It doesn't work so great for the work system that blocks everything under the sun.
That's true.
But they don't block GitHub at work, so I still can use Chesmoy.
I wonder if you could set up a GitHub Actions pipeline to just allow, you could use GitHub as a proxy and dodge that whole block.
If I'm going to go to that extent, I'll just use my Linode virtual server.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of work blocking stuff, I'll never forget when, I don't remember what year it was, but it was before Let's Encrypt was announced and everyone is saying, let's use TLS on everything. It was before that. At my company, if you were inside the network and you tried to download Google Earth, you would always get like 90 megabytes into it and the connection would get dropped. And it took weeks to finally figure out that the firewall had decided that the service that had signatures we subscribed to had decided to ban all streams that contain a libpng encoded object. So slow clap for that one.
So looks like we got almost a full crew. Ben, do you want to start? Jeb,
Sure.
Is it okay if we start Ben now?
Sure, yeah.
Right. Now you may hear this clanking in the background. It just started. Sounds like it stopped. It happens every once in a while. It's one of these pipes. I don't really understand why, but if there's clanking, now you know why. You know to ignore it. All right, I will share my screen. Can you guys, can you see this?
Yep.
Is it visible? Cool. All right. Is this readable? Want it bigger?
Yes,
It is readable?
very readable.
Good. Okay. All right. So this is a talk about the Nix package manager.
I'm not sure it's on YouTube, so maybe we could make it a little bigger.
Sure. Yeah. And I'm sure it's plenty big. Is that good?
Yeah, that looks good.
Cool. Okay. The Nix package manager, spelled N-I-X. It does a lot of different things. Nix is the name of many tools within the Nix ecosystem. So this is about specifically the package manager. And it also really only touches the surface. Like there's a very complicated and deep tool with many features. And I am not an expert. I signed up to do this talk primarily so that I would encourage myself to learn how to use the tool. with the risk of embarrassment if I do not. So I guess we'll see if I do embarrass myself. All right, so Nix is a package manager. Quickly, let's just run through what we use package managers for. So why is it, why do you use your system's package manager? I'm fielding questions from the audience here.
I mean, obviously to install products and packages and stuff like that.
Right, but why install them through your package manager as opposed to just getting them from the internet? Or getting them from somewhere else? Or using a different package manager?
So you can share dependencies across different projects that you've installed.
Right, yeah, shared dependencies.
Not waiting for it to compile.
Not waiting for, waiting for it to compile. Yeah, so you don't have to build it from source. So you can have binary distribution.
Because it's easier to type apt-get install foo than chase down a website.
For sure, yeah. And it's more secure, right? You don't, I mean, if you're getting it from a website, who knows if you have to really be certain you're on google.com and not goog.com. And you got to make sure your browser is secure, things like that. You can also trust probably that your repositories are less likely to be compromised than some website, although that may not always be true. You mentioned shared dependencies. There's also, of course, the problem of dependency hell, where it maybe I have circular dependencies. Maybe I have different packages that require different versions of the same library, and those are incompatible and can't be installed on the same system. And so your package manager handles all those conflicts for you, if it's a good one. So those are the kind of things that a package manager can solve for you. But there are a lot of situations in which it would be nice to be able to use a package manager, but they don't really work out. So I don't know if you guys can think of any of those where you have to, when do you have to resort to not using your system's package manager?
Well, you
When
mentioned Go ahead, Ben.
I was going to say when the version that's in the distribution isn't the one you want for whatever reason.
Yeah, that's a big one. You want software that's old or new?
The case a moment ago was if two packages have incompatible version dependency hell prerequisites, you may have to bring one of them in through Snap or Flatpak or something.
Yeah. Right. So those are more, formats that encompass, they'll package up with the package a little. I'm not exactly sure how Snap works, but I think Flatpak works by basically duplicating a lot of the environment into the package. I could be wrong about that. And so it dodges the problem of incompatible dependencies because it sticks all the dependencies in with each package. Does that sound right?
Yes, and in modern systems where we have lots of RAM, this works reasonably well. In the early days, the point of a shared library was you'd have only one read-only copy in RAM, as well as only one copy installed.
Right. And shared libraries also come with some security benefits because I can update a shared library and fix a bug. And I've now fixed that bug in all of the things that depend on that library at runtime. But if it's a statically linked library, then I've got to update every single package that uses that library. So it's not just memory usage.
Another issue with package managers is web applications have not agreed on how to integrate with the host OSs that they run on. Yeah. So it's like every web application is its own adventure of how to integrate it with whatever you happen to have installed. And because of that, the Debian system, the Red Hat Fedora system, they all have like, a couple dozen web applications packaged, and then they just kind of gave up after that.
So yeah, that's a really big problem with certain languages that have very different packaging philosophies, like big JavaScript web applications for which you might need 500 different npm modules installed, and they need to be pegged at specific versions, and they're all really obscure, and it's unlikely that your system has packaged any of them. For sure, yeah. Python has a similar problem. So like this is Arch Linux. Arch packages a bunch of Python modules, but there's too many Python modules, and anyone can make a Python module. And people who write a lot of Python tend to just pull in dependencies willy-nilly, and it leads to a lot of problems where I'll try to run something, and it requires some really weird, obscure Python module that no one has updated in forever and isn't packaged in my repository. And then I've got to call out to pip, and then you got to deal with virtual environments. I might only want this to be installed for this project, or I might want it installed for my user with pip, or I might want it installed system-wide through pip. So yeah, when you're using languages that don't integrate nicely with your system, like JavaScript and Python, you're forced to not use your system's package manager most of the time. Can anyone think of any more? I would say I only have like a couple more. If we want software that's really weird and obscure, of course, it's not going to be packaged. And if we want software that really needs to run exactly the same on my computer as it does on your computer, then I'm more likely to turn to something like containers than I am to just get that software through my package manager. Because if it's really important that I have something reproducible, I actually don't want to rely on my system's package manager, because it might make lots of assumptions that I'm on a particular distribution of Linux. So it's in those situations, it's often better to turn to something with, like to VMs or containers or, some kind of reproducible environment. All right, so that's some motivation. And now we get to Nix. So Nix is a package manager that looks to solve a lot of the problems we just listed. There's also an OS called NixOS that uses Nix as its system package manager. And it allows you it does a lot more things than manage packages when you're using Nix on NixOS. There's also the Nix language, which is a functional programming language that you use to create Nix packages, and also to specify all kinds of configuration options within NixOS. And we're not going to really talk about NixOS or the Nix language for the rest of this talk. This is purely about the package manager, and a future talk may be about one of those other two things. Okay, so the first thing you probably want to know is how to set up the Nix package manager. Nix is packaged for a lot of different Linux distributions in their native package manager. So here on Arch, I can just go get Nix, and I can show you here. It's around. It's in here somewhere. Nix, right here. There is Nix. So you can just get it from your system's package manager. You can also get it by, they have a shell script on their website that you can curl and pipe directly into your shell. That's what they recommend. That's kind of I don't know if I recommend curling anything directly into your shell, but it's your computer. Do what you want. And once you run that script or you install it from your package manager, there's a couple more things you'd have to do. The first thing is you need to ensure that your user is in the Nix users group. So user mod dash append dash g Nix users, and then your username. And that will add you here. I didn't actually type sudo, but I already am in the group. You can see here I am, Nix users. So make sure your user is in Nix users. And then you want to start the Nix daemon. So on a systemd system, that's going to be systemctl enable dash dash now Nix daemon service. And I'm not going to authenticate here, but if you look, it is running. Okay, so you've started up the daemon, you've added yourself to the group, you've installed Nix. Then you need to tell Nix which channel to use. So this is kind of the first place where Nix starts getting interesting. So normally if I'm running, and I could be wrong about this, so please feel free to interrupt me if I say something incorrect. At least on Arch, if I install Arch, the version of the Arch repositories that I have access to is just the current version of the Arch repositories, and there's only one. That's because Arch is a rolling release distribution. On a fixed release distribution like Ubuntu, then the version of the repositories I have access to is just tied to whatever release of that distribution I'm on. So if I'm on Ubuntu 2004, then I get access to the Ubuntu 2004 repositories. Is that right? Can you also access the Ubuntu 1804 repositories on 2004? Or the 2204 repositories?
Only in a container. You can't install old packages on the new OS in Ubuntu. And
Okay.
Some of them work, but generally it's not a good idea.
Yeah, I've done it before by just downloading debs from various places, but it's a big pain certainly to get it going, and it's not something that is officially supported. That was my understanding too, so I'm glad I didn't say something wrong. Okay, so Nix allows you to choose which channel of Nix packages you want to subscribe to, and you can have many channels concurrently set up. So I can say I want to have the unstable channel, which means I have access to the latest versions of packages in the repositories. I can also go, the furthest back I've got working is 2015. Nix has only been around since I think the oldest repositories I could see were from 2013. I think the tool is actually much older than that. It started as somebody's like grad school project in the early 2000s, but it's really been picking up steam recently. Anyway, I was able to get the 2015 September repositories working and everything between then and now. Anyway, getting back to where just in the setup process, to enable a channel, what you want to do is you want to say Nix channel -- add, and then just give the URL of the channel and give it a name. So here we're going to go to nixos.org/channels/Nix packages unstable. And we're going to call that Nix packages. Now, by default, the name of your default channel is Nix packages, spelled like that. So if I actually left this off, it would still name the channel Nix packages. Now, I already have this channel installed, so I'm not going to actually run this command. But this would be the command you would run to add the unstable channel. If you wanted to add a different channel, then for whatever reason, instead of being called Nix packages and then the version, it's actually called NixOS and then the version. And then you'd have to give it a name. So here, we could go install the 1509 repositories and call it that. Now, let me just make sure. I'm just going to check quickly to see if I actually already have that one installed. So Nix channel -- list looks out the channels I have. And yes, I do have that channel. So I'm not going to go install it again. But if I wanted to get a different channel, if I wanted to get, for example, 2205. So that's only a few months ago. Just give it a name, Nix packages 2205, Nix channel add. So now I've added the channel, and then you just do Nix channel update. And now if I do Nix channel list, I now have 3 channels. Okay, so I can have concurrently new and old versions of packages installed. I can select from what time period I would like to have those packages come. All right, so that's the first kind of interesting thing about Nix that we've seen. All right, so once you've done that, log out and log back in, and then you should have access to the main package management features of Nix. So I've already done that, so I'm not going to do that again. But if you are following along in your mind, that's what you would do. Would be log out and log back in. All right, so now when you want to use the normal package management features of Nix, you use the nixenv command. So far we've seen Nix channel, which is for managing channels, and nixenv, which is for the kind of more traditional package manager operations. So nixenv -- install is for installing a package. So then you can say -a if you want to specify which channel it's from. Otherwise, it will just use your default Nix packages channel, which for me is unstable. So I can, and you can also say Nix packages or nixenv -i and -ia would be the kind of traditional way to see it. So if I want to go install a package like on Arch, they no longer package Python 2. So Python is Python 3. And if I want to try to find Python 2, it's not there. This is the only thing they have that even has the string Python 2 in the description. So there's no Python 2 on Arch, but there is on Nix. So I can go install Nix packages.python2. And here, what I'm specifying is the channel. So I'm saying it's from my Nix packages channel, which is default. But I could also specify a different channel, like Nix packages 2205, or it was 0522. I think it's 2205. And this would get the version from that channel. So we're going to get the default version of Python 2. And there you go. So it goes and grabs the package and then installs it. And it does not install it to the normal place where a normal package manager would stick this binary. And we're going to see that later. So if you want to remove a package, you just use uninstall. And then you, again, just give the name of the package. I don't remember if you have to say the channel here, but no, I don't think you have to. Right, it's called Python. Sometimes the name that you use to install it is not actually the name of the package. It's one of the confusing UI elements here. Maybe you don't have to say the channel. Yeah. So yeah, you don't have to say the channel when you're uninstalling. Okay. So here you uninstall with -- uninstall. You can also use -e to uninstall. Then there is another common operation would be you want to list out all your packages. That would be nixenv -q. And here I have nothing installed because all I did was install Python 2 and then get rid of it. But if I were to go install Python 2 again, this would list out the package and the channel that it's from. And then to search for a package, you use QAP. And then you can search by regular expression. So I can look for all packages containing Python. And it'll take a long time because there's 80,000 packages. And lots of them have the string Python in them. Because lots of Python packages are packaged for Nix. So you can avoid having to use pip so much and just get all your Python packages through pip or through Nix if they're supported. Anyway, here's the big list of all the Python, all the things that have Python in them. So you've got, this looks like some common Lisp Python interfaces, some Emacs stuff, and then stuff for PyPy. You can see there's lots and lots and lots of these. Here's just the Python 2 packages. And then way below, now we have the Python 3.10 packages. There's a whole lot of this stuff. It's a really, really, really giant package repository. So there's just a whole ton of stuff in here. And being able to search by regex, I think is pretty cool. Because as it is right now, I normally would search for a package like this, and then pipe it into grep, and pipe that into another grep potentially, and that's kind of a pain. It's nice that the package manager does all that for me. So those are all the basic package management operations that you'd expect. And here's something else that's pretty cool. So remember, what we've done so far really is install Python 2 and then uninstall it. And at every install and uninstall, Nix creates a generation for the packages installed on your system. So I can roll back to any intermediate state of the packages that I've ever had on my system. So unless I like explicitly delete those generations. So here I can say nix env -- list generations to see what my generations are. So I have 3 right now because I actually cleared them out before I started this. So the first was the state of my machine before this talk. The second is the state of my machine once I installed Python 2. And the third, which is the current, is the state of my machine now that I have once again uninstalled Python 2. So I can do nix env -- rollback and return to the previous state of the machine. And now if I try Python 2, it works. But if I were to nix env switch generation back to where I started, and I try running Python 2 again, it's no longer installed, or it's no longer visible to me. So each of these install and uninstall operations, they're not, you shouldn't feel like they're set in stone, because if you make a mistake and you end up with a weird configuration of your system, you can always roll back to the exact package state that you had earlier, which is really, really cool. Now, of course, after a long time, generations can start to take up space because you keep around packages that you've uninstalled. So you can prune off old generations. I think it's, I can't remember the exact command. It might be remove, remove generations 28, 29. I think we'll delete the, maybe it was remove generation. Delete generation, something like that. Well, there's a command that allows you to remove old generations. At this point, like it's not really all that important. I might want to roll back, but if it's been like a month, you probably don't want to roll back a full month. So you might do well just pruning off some of those older generations. All right, so that's generations. Those are pretty cool, and they allow you to roll back to the exact state that your system was in terms of the packages installed, and go back and forth between those states. All right, so in the state that I'm in now, if I look, I have nothing, I have no Nix packages installed. And let's say I want to keep it that way. I don't want to install Python 2 for real. I just want to use it and for like one quick thing and then be done. So let's say I have, here I have this old script. And what's in it? Well, it's a print statement that's a print statement. So this will only work in Python 2. If I try to run it through Python 3, it tells me that I don't have parentheses. In Python 2, you didn't need those parentheses. So let's say I just want to run this one script in Python 2, but I don't actually really want to have Python 2 installed on my system. Well, I can do nix shell -- packages, Python 2. And then it'll just drop me into a shell that has the packages I asked for installed and no other Nix packages. So now I can run that old script and it works, right? It prints the thing that it's supposed to. And when I close this and I ask, oh, what packages do I have? I still don't have Python 2. So I can go and grab like a whole bunch of packages, and I can even specify what channel they come from. So I can create a reproducible build environment this way by saying, I need these 10 packages from this particular channel from 3 years ago, and I can send you a script that gets exactly the same packages from exactly the same place, enters a shell that has exactly those same resources, and then goes and does whatever I want it to do. All of this without duplicating the file system like containers would. I don't need to run multiple user lands. I can just have my system's user land with all the specific pieces I need replaced with Nix. All right, so let's now kind of dig in here. I'm going to install a couple of packages. So we're going to get wget and wget2 and curl and chromium and I don't know if you guys have any suggestions here. Anything else you guys want me to install? Nothing malicious?
I like using ZimWiki for taking notes.
ZimWiki. All right, I've never heard of that. Let me search to see what the package is called. So nixenv-qap. It's a ZIM.
Yep.
.wiki. See what that.
I'm not sure if wiki is in the name of the package.
Oh, it might just be Zim.
Zim, yeah.
Okay, well, let's look at all the things that have Zim in there anywhere. Maybe I should just search for Zim. I'm getting too fancy with all the ability to do regex searching. It's just too appealing. It can be slow waiting for the searches. Okay, so here. Okay, we've got Zim 0.63 in the Nix packages 1509 channel. We've got 0.7.4.2 in 2205, and we've got 7.4.3 in unstable. So let's just get the one from unstable. So we'll do nixenv-ia nix packages.zim. So here, I'm going to get rid of the A here because when you specify the A, that's where you would say which channel each one is from. And if you want them to come from the default channel, you can just get rid of the A. You don't have to think about that. So here I'm asking for wget, wget2, curl, chromium, and zim. And you just wait while it gets all those things. Great. Okay. Cool. So it's gotten all the things. We scroll up through this. You can see it's getting these packages, and then you see it's got these gigantic. It's got these paths /nix/store/ a bunch of junk dash the name of a package and a version. So this is really where all your packages go with Nix. They go into the Nix store, which is usually at /nix/store. And they're stored in a really interesting way. So instead of trusting that a version number is necessarily unique, it might be, right, if I'm a really neglectful package manager, I might decide to make, my package 3.0, and then I might make another version of my package also called 3.0. So it's probably not smart to trust that the developer of the package actually has a sane versioning scheme for their system. They might reset the versioning scheme. They might do who knows what. So
True.
yeah. So the way that Nix gets around this is they, in addition to having the version name, the version in the package name in the Nix store and the name of the package, and also potentially more information about it, like if it's the binary version or the development version. They also stick a big giant hash of the entire dependency graph of that package in the package name in the Nix store. That way, I won't have a name conflict unless two packages have the same set of dependencies and the same name and the same version, which I suppose is possible, but I think pretty unlikely. Yeah, let's here you can see I've got all these things in the Nix store that got installed as dependencies of other packages. Dependencies, just like a normal package manager, are shared between packages if necessary, but they're not in my path. So like this package by default, it has its own bin directory that is opaque to me right now, sitting here, and will only be visible to my package when I run it. So to whatever depends on that, whatever depends on this package will be able to see it. But this isn't just globally accessible to me right now. This allows me to have multiple packages that have conflicting dependencies because the dependencies aren't globally accessible. But if they can be shared, then they are. So I don't have the problem of flat packs where all the binaries get really big. And I also don't have the problem of normal packages where I don't have giant binaries, but I also might have conflicting libraries. So this dodges both of those problems.
So is that what the server is serving, these binaries from the Nix store?
So yeah, it's serving, the server has a big giant repository of all these binaries. Some of them are binaries, some of them are source that your computer will build. And yeah, it's just serving these packages to you, and your computer is sticking them in the Nix store. So here I can look at my own Nix store, and it's just completely full of stuff. Now, these DRV files are actually, you can think of them as little scripts that contain the instructions for how to make this package. And they're written in the Nix language. And I don't really know exactly how they work. There's also various like patches in here that will get automatically applied to certain things that don't quite work with other things in the Nix store. And then the directories are the packages you have installed. Now they could be packages you've deliberately installed. They could be dependencies of other things. So you know, the Nix store, it's very busy. There's a lot of stuff going on here, but you don't have full access to all the Nix store at any given moment. What I have, I just have these packages installed. All I have is Chromium, curl, wget, wget2, and zim. So where are those? If I do wget zim, this directory does get in my path. So when I install Nix, it changes my /etc/profile, or I think it doesn't change my profile. It sticks a script into /etc/profile.d, so that will run when I log in, that adds this to my path. So here in my Nix profile, in the bin directory, you can see there's symbolic links for all the packages I just installed. And these link into the Nix store. So the whole Nix store is not accessible to me, just the packages I installed deliberately, not the ones that got installed as dependencies of other things. So now I can go run. So this is, if I were to run curl right now, it'd probably be my system's curl, but I can check. Yeah, so I'd have to, now if I try it. Yeah, okay, now it's pointing to my actual curl. And you can see I've got two different versions installed. So I can do curl version. This is the curl that I got from Nix. And if I did user bin curl version, this is the curl I got from Arch. Turns out they're the same version, but they were built with slightly different versions of libraries. So this has zlib 1.2.13, and this has zlib 1.2.12. So maybe not the greatest example, but you can have the same thing installed with your systems package manager and with Nix without having, with access to both. And then you can install multiple versions with Nix. Another thing I haven't yet mentioned that is an important thing to note is that Nix works completely on macOS. So you can have exactly the same set of packages installed on Linux and macOS, assuming that a version exists. So you don't have to have something that's packaged both for Brew and for your systems package manager. You can just have something packaged for Nix, and it will then be packaged on both macOS and Linux. Also, Brew, I've had lots of bad experiences with Brew. It really steps on certain directories in the macOS system that I don't want it to. So it's nice to have something that just sticks everything in its own set of directories, and then you don't have to worry about what it might potentially touch or mess with or change permissions on.
You need to use Brew in order to install this on Mac?
No, so you can get it directly. They have an install script for macOS that you can get directly from their website, and then you can not have to use Brew. It may also be a package in Brew, I'm not sure. But if you're installing it through Brew, you're really racking up the package managers at that point. So the next time I have to use a Mac for this kind of thing, I will probably not use Brew and just go straight with Nix. Anyway, the cool thing here is that all of these are symlinks into the Nix store. So I can have them installed for my user and not installed for a different user because they're going to have different symlinks in their .nix profile/bin based on what they want, but we can still share the same packages. And I can also uninstall and reinstall packages without really changing anything. All it's really doing is deleting a symbolic link. So I can do nix-env-e Chromium. It gets rid of it. And then if I look in this directory again, oops, .nix profile, then Chromium is no longer there. But in actuality, delete all the trash that nothing is using anymore. So Nix collect garbage, you can see, went and made 460 megabytes of free stuff. I imagine most of that is Chromium and dependencies of Chromium. Okay. Here's another interesting thing. So
Actually, you think they'd repeat that last little bit that you're doing while the live streaming was off?
Sure. Yeah. The gist of it is that you might actually want to delete a package and not just uninstall it from your view, but leave it in the Nix store. And when that's the case, you just use Nix collect garbage, and it will check what are the packages I have that no one has as like in their personal like Nix profile. So if you uninstall a package, by default, it'll just leave it in the store because you might want to roll back. But if you uninstall it and then Nix collect garbage, then it'll know, okay, I should actually go and throw this in the real trash and delete the actual file. So that's just another useful Nix command. The final thing I wanted to mention is that the Nix packages themselves are built in a sandboxed environment, and you have access to that sandbox for your own project. So you can use what's called Nix flakes. Now this is getting to stuff that I'm not super familiar with, but there are Nix flakes, which is basically a way I can make a project that and manage the dependencies for my own project as though it were a Nix package, and then package it for Nix. And this allows me to do things like create environments where no resources are accessible except for those that I get through Nix. So I can guarantee that if my project builds, then for sure all the dependencies are there, and they've for sure been specified like with Nix, and they're not leaking in from my system. And all of the Nix packages are built this way. So you can be reasonably sure that, like, for example, on Arch, every once in a while I get a package that there's a missing dependency and I really need to install something else, and it slipped through the cracks. That can't happen by design in Nix because of the way they've set up the Nix sandbox. It also means that if I build a package from source and you build the same package from source, well, then we end up with exactly the same binary, which is cool because then I don't need to download giant opaque binaries, but then I can still check to make sure that my resulting package matches the hash of your package on your system. Yeah, this adds a little bit more overhead when you're trying to maintain a package, but it's pretty cool. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got. One very final note is you may have noticed that I didn't have to use sudo to uninstall or install any of those packages. You need sudo to set up Nix, but once you have it set up, the Nix daemon is actually doing all the work. So it has permissions to mess with the Nix store. I don't have those permissions as just regular Joe user, but I can, when I install packages, I'm just asking the Nix daemon to get the package from a place that's been pre-configured where it knows packages come from. So I can install packages without root permission that are visible only to me. So that's pretty cool. And
does the daemon run as root?
think so. I mean, I think it may run as its own user. We can check this. We can look at what the Nix store is. The Nix store is owned by root. If I look in here, remember if it's user group or group user? I think it's user group, right?
Yes.
Okay, so there is some kind of permission system going on with this Nix build group, but I'm not exactly sure. It does look like the Nix daemon runs as root, but it may also just be a member of the Nix build group.
I mean, it should be running now, right? Can you just do ps grep or ps
Yeah, I can.
grep?
Yeah. Here, I could do this. Into grep Nix, use capital, into less.
Oh.
Let me zoom out here. Yeah, so it's got really long options, some of my things. So this seems to be Brave, which is how I'm running this now. So all of that can be ignored. Here's my grep. Here is Nix daemon -- daemon, which is running as root. There you go. Runs as root.
It seems like that might be a security exposure, having a daemon that's running as root, doing all of this stuff with all of these packages that came from other places.
So they all come from one trusted source. So ultimately, you're always trusting the people who run your package repositories. And your package manager already runs as root. So I wouldn't say that it is inherently much less secure than running your normal package manager as root.
Fair
Although
point.
I would also argue that the more things that run as root, the worse. So it isn't great that it runs as root. I agree.
Okay, put the font size back up again.
Oh, sure. Yeah. A final note, there are other front ends that use the Nix store too. So Nix has its own configuration language that's, people are opinionated about it. So if you don't like it, there's also GNU Geeks, spelled G-U-I-X, that basically implements the exact same functionality and uses the Nix store and the set of Nix packages, but instead of programming it with the Nix language to make packages, you program it with GNU Guile, which is basically Scheme. So if you're more into Lisp, that might be the flavor to go for you. But it achieves pretty much the same goals. And that's a pretty cool feature, I think, that the sort of back end of this whole thing is accessible, and you can design alternate front ends to suit your preferences. So yeah, that's pretty much all I've got. There's a whole lot more to this tool, especially with NixOS. You can do all kinds of crazy things. You can specify pretty much your entire system configuration in a single config file. You can do things like, say, instead of having to write like grub mkconfig -o whatever, and then grub install -- target equals x86 64 EFI -- EFI directory is this other thing. And you have to remember all these commands every time you want to reinstall your system if you have a distribution that doesn't have a nice installer. Well, with Nix, with NixOS, you basically have this big declarative config file where I just write, okay, it has a bunch of options in the config file, like where is your EFI directory? What is your, like, here are a bunch of grub configuration options. Just set them in the config file. And then you run a single command to just regenerate your entire OS. So you change your configuration file and your OS changes to match it. So no more commands to remember. You just have one giant config file that specifies your whole system. And you can take that same config file, move it to another computer, and now you've just duplicated the state of your previous computer. And you can manage your dot files in a similar way with a tool called Home Manager that they also make. I've played with NixOS, but I wouldn't say I'm comfortable with it. Home Manager I've never tried, so I can't really say one way or the other whether it's worth it. But certainly this is an interesting approach to package management. I haven't seen other systems try, so I think it's pretty cool.
So when you do a first time install, you have to first spend a few hours creating the config file.
No, so I'm sorry. The very first time you install NixOS, yes, you do need to configure it the way you want. But I would say that most distributions, you have to configure things the way you want. It does have a default, a set of defaults in which very few packages are installed and things are configured the way they think you might want it. So if you're cool with the defaults, you can just leave it as is. Otherwise, yeah, you have to spend some time making the config file. But the benefit is that you can take that config file with you to every computer you set up in the future. And you only have to change the pieces of it that you actually want to change. Instead of having to dig through menus and find all the settings, they're all exposed to you through this one giant config file.
There's an option to have it auto detect most of the settings.
I'm sorry?
Is there an option to have it like auto detect set of settings?
To generate a config file from your current system state? I'm not sure. I've never heard of that, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's out there.
With things like Fedora and Ubuntu, they basically look at the system and figure out what sense, so you don't have to do a whole lot of customizing.
They figure out what?
They'll detect what CPU you're running. It'll.
Oh, so for things like your hardware, yeah, you specify. You can specify if you want to install things like microcode that might be specific to your hardware, or particular drivers. But I think this is more for those would be exposed as packages. So you would just say that you want those packages. The NixOS config file is more for things like the configuration of those. Of those. Maybe I have an NVIDIA graphics card, but I want to blacklist the Nouveau driver because I want to make sure I always use the proprietary driver. Maybe I want to blacklist the proprietary driver just in case I accidentally install it, but I really always want to use Nouveau. Those kinds of things you specify in the big config file. So more things that would already be customizations. Anyway, that's all I've got. So happy to answer more questions if I can.
Interesting.
Do you have some notes you were using for the talk? Because if they are, I'd like to put them on our website.
Yes, I do have lots of notes. They are here on the laptop next to me. I can give you them, although they aren't. The grammar isn't perfect. There's a lot of sentence fragments. But yeah, I can send them over right now.
Okay, that'd be great. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Oh my God.
I spent a lot of time trying to get the screen sharing to work on this before the meeting. I had never had it work before. This is a Wayland window manager, and it's always given me problems with screen sharing. But it turns out what I needed to do was this. XDG desktop portal and XDG desktop portal WLR both need to be running in the background. And then I can share my screen fine.
Yeah, the font's way too small now. I can't read any of that.
Sorry, that's because I stopped the process as it was being used. So it seems like the screen sharing probably just crashed. Let me try to get this going again. Oops.
The hints on what Wayland needs for screen sharing would be useful things to either put in the chat or send along to Jabber for notes as well.
Oh yeah, I actually wrote the two commands at the bottom of the notes just by coincidence that I was already going to send to him. So that works out.
Excellent.
Does the Nix package manager track configuration files? We were talking about config files at the beginning, and you can install Chromium, use it for 10 minutes, and now you've got a 0.5 GB profile folder. Does Nix know anything about getting rid of that, or do you have to go find it and get rid of it yourself?
So Nix, there's another tool that's not the Nix package manager called Home Manager that does track all that stuff. But by default, the Nix package manager does not track all of that stuff. So it's, if you use Home Manager, then you can track all that through Nix and have like one grand unified config. But by default, no, it doesn't do that. The commands also to get the screen sharing to work on Wayland is it depends on what desktop environment or window manager you're using. So I'm using, this is Sway, so it's based on WL roots. So I need XDG desktop portal WLR. But if this were KDE, I would want XDG desktop portal KDE. And it may be that it would be default enabled on something as complete as KDE. And I only have this, it's possible I only have this issue because this is fairly minimal. But previously I used to just change TTYs into X11 and then share from there. So this is a lot nicer than that.
If there are no other questions, I guess we can just call it a night.
All right.
Okay, Ben, thank you very much. I was very interested in it.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Nice seeing you guys. I guess I'll see you later.
Thanks, Brendan. Ben.
Okay, good night.
Yep.
Thanks.
Not sure what to do for next month.
Yeah, I haven't a clue. I was almost going to ask Ben to just do a NixOS. Did you hear me?
Oh, yeah. That might be an interesting talk if he wants to do it. I don't know if he's going to want to do 2 months in a row.
Yeah, that's why I didn't ask him.
We're talking to Dan Stoltz. So I sent him I asked him through email probably 4 or 5 months ago whether he could Windows Linux for the cell thing. Windows.
I haven't talked to Dan in a long time.
I guess I'm 2 or 3 emails over. I never heard anything back from him. Left planet. Suppose we can ask Kurt their plan with it. concerned that if we at some point we get tired of
Okay, I'm going to stop the live feed.